Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well folks, today I'm going to talk about the lovable characters from Jim Henson's library, the Muppets again. If you may recall, in the past, I looked at the Muppet movie where Kermit and the gang went on a cross-country road trip to Hollywood to become movie stars. But before then, I looked at Muppets Most Wanted, where the gang went on a world tour, which was actually a setup by the world's most dangerous frog. And during the holiday season of 2015, I looked at the Muppet Christmas Carol, where the Muppets did their own rendition of Charles Dickens' classic Christmas story. By the way, other than A Christmas Carol, the Muppets did their own takes on other classical stories, like Treasure Island and The Wizard of Oz. But I don't know if many folks these days remember that during the early 90s, there was a direct-to-video movie where the Muppets did their own versions of 6 beloved fairy tales. And that's the movie that I'll be looking at today. Released to home video on September 27th, 1994, the movie is Muppet Classic Theater. Now, taking place in the Muppet Theater, Gonzo the Great and Rizzo the Rat host a presentation where the Muppets perform 6 classic fairy tales, which consist of The Three Little Pigs, King Midas, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, Rumpelstiltskin, The Emperor's New Clothes, and The Elves and the Shoemaker. So, what do I think about this movie anyway? Well, ever since I was young, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I think it does a nice job introducing children to fairy tales that they love, and some that they never knew about at the time. But before I get ahead of myself, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, there's not too much trivia to talk about here, other than the fact that the film was directed by David Grossman, who's best known for his work on the ABC series Desperate Housewives. And one of the producers on the movie was the Jim Henson Company's current chairman, Brian Henson, who also performs as 4 Muppet characters in the movie. Before I saw this movie on VHS when I was little, I knew about several classic fairy tales from not only children's books, but also from Disney's Silly Symphony cartoons, Richard Scarry's Golden Books franchise, and the Timeless Tales series from Hallmark. And while those were childhood wonders, I think the way the Muppets do their own take on these stories are pretty fun and humorous. However, I think this would have to be the only Muppet movie that I ever watched that does not feature any live-action guest stars. So, I guess this whole movie is done entirely with puppeteering, which, in my opinion, is done pretty well. As for the characters themselves, well, we do have the classic characters like Kermit the Frog, his nephew Robin, his girlfriend Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, along with our hosts Gonzo the Great and Rizzo the Rat. And to me, Gonzo and Rizzo are equally as fun here as they were in Muppet Christmas Carol. Plus, not only do they serve as the narrators, but they also have some roles in some of the stories. Also, the scene where Rizzo is inside a bucket of popcorn was pretty funny, even though normally that would be gross. We also have other Muppet characters like Montague Rat, who got to be one of Scrooge's bookkeeping rats in the Muppet Christmas Carol, and Yolanda Rat, who first appeared in Muppets Take Manhattan. And we also have Andy and Randy Pig and the Elvises, who would later have appearances on Muppets Tonight, which I used to watch a lot on the Disney Channel when I was young. And the other characters in the film are, I think, original Muppets that were only made for the movie. However, I'm kind of disappointed that this movie does not include characters like Rolf the Dog, Dr. Buns the Honeydew, Beaker, or even the Electric Mayhem. Maybe due to this film's budget or something like that, I don't know. Also, this movie features something that has never been done in a movie in years. There's a brief intermission halfway through the film. Also, this wouldn't be a Muppet movie without catchy musical numbers. In total, there are 6 songs in this movie, 1 per story, that is. And in my opinion, all these songs are zany, fun, toe-tapping, and full of Muppet humor. However, my favorites would have to be Gotta Get That Name, sung during the Rumpelstiltskin segment, where the cast is trying to figure out the name of the weird little man. And we have Blue Suede Shoes, aka Bad Shoe Blues, sung a couple times during the Elves and the Shoemaker segment by the Elvises, while they make new shoes for the Shoemaker. And of course, they sing it again during the end credits. Now, believe it or not, it was this movie, not Rock-a-Doodle, that introduced me to the king of rock and roll. And this was 4 years before I visited his place in Graceland, Tennessee. Also, to me, this song is just so catchy that I can't help but tap my feet while listening to it. And now let's talk about each of the stories featured in here. First up, the 3 Little Pigs. In this version, Miss Piggy and her nephews, Andy and Randy, play as 3 pigs who go out into the world and build homes of their own. Andy and Randy claim that they're strong, smart boys who can take care of themselves, while also looking after their little sister Sandy. However, in reality, the 2 boys are actually dumb pigs who love to charge at each other, while Sandy seems like a strong, independent pig who seems to know best. Anyway, like in the original story, the 3 little pigs build 3 houses, one made of straw, one of sticks, and one made of wolf-proof bricks. One night, the big bad wolf comes along and blows down Andy and Randy's houses, which causes the 2 boys to turn to Sandy for shelter, but only if they promise to show her some respect. The following morning, after trying to blow down Sandy's house and disguising himself as a pizza delivery man, the wolf decides to go down the chimney while being dressed like Santa Claus. However, instead of burning his tail with a kettle of boiling water, Sandy lights a large firecracker and launches the big bad wolf into the sky. Next up is the story of King Midas. Now, firstly, this story is more Greek mythology than a fairy tale. And secondly, while it was the very first Greek myth that I ever heard about, I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of this story due to what happens. You see, in the original story, King Midas is a greedy king who is given the ability to turn anything he touches into gold. But things get very serious when he can't eat anything, and then it becomes very severe when his daughter Marigold turns into gold too. However, In this version, King Midas, played by Kermit the Frog, is a calm, friendly king who wants world peace, while his wife, Queen Midas, played by Miss Piggy, is a greedy pig who wants more money. But one fine morning, they meet a satyr, played by Gonzo, who grants the golden touch, and after touching a rose, King Midas isn't very happy, and later, upon reacting to his food being turned to gold, King Midas accidentally turns himself into gold by touching himself, which, as a kid, put me in a state of shock. After several attempts to get her husband back, the satyr tells Queen Midas that the effects of the golden touch can be undone if she renounces her interest in gold. Now, in my opinion, while it's not my favorite story, it does give a good moral where the main character realizes that he, or in this case, she, didn't know what she had until she lost it. Plus, it also teaches us that too much of anything is not good for you. Plus, I kinda cracked up when Queen Midas kicks and punches the royal doctor, the royal jeweler, and the royal jester when they can't help her. Plus, the scene where the satyr appears in his bath clothes made me think of a similar scene in Disney's Aladdin. Now we come to the story of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, where Gonzo plays as a young shepherd who sometimes has a tendency to overreact. And because of the shepherd's repeated panicking and false claims to stuff like earthquakes and tidal waves due to him bumping into a pile of rocks and a sheep squirting water at him earlier, the mayor and the villagers begin to doubt his word. But one day, while the shepherd was playing Go Fish with his sheep, a wolf shows up and challenges the shepherd to obtain help within 24 hours before he eats his sheep. And since the villagers won't help, what does the shepherd do? Well, one of the sheep gets an idea of getting help from his cousin Norman, who happens to be an oversized ram. And as soon as the wolf returns, Norman defeats the wolf by pinning him to the ground and crushing him. In the end, the mayor gives the shepherd a medal, the whole village rejoices, and the shepherd makes a vow that he'll never overreact again. After the movie's intermission, we come to one of my all-time favorite fairy tales, the story of Rumpelstiltskin. In this story, a sad and lonely king orders his loyal royal advisor to help him find a special and fair young maiden to be his wife, and he promises the advisor that he will be rewarded with his own castle if he succeeds. Upon meeting the miller, the king and the advisor learns that his daughter Piggy can spin straw into gold. So, the advisor locks Piggy in a room filled with straw in order for her to demonstrate her talent, otherwise she'll be locked in the dungeon. Suddenly, a weird little man appears and offers to turn the straw into gold using a spinning wheel. But, upon Piggy's second test, the weird man demands for her firstborn baby. Later, after the king marries Piggy and makes her queen and they have a baby, the weird man agrees to let her keep the child if she can guess his name. Later, after Piggy, her husband, the advisor, and her father try several attempts to guess his name, Piggy finds out that the weird man went to summer camp, and she finds Rumpelstiltskin's name on his label. The reason why this is my favorite fairy tale is because this version shows Gonzo at his craziest. Plus, I think his portrayal of Rumpelstiltskin is 10 times better than Walt Doran's portrayal in the Shrek finale. And I like when Gonzo explodes upon entering and exiting the scenes. Plus, the part where he got caught in the curtain ropes and falls was very hilarious. Our next story is The Emperor's New Clothes. In this story, Rizzo, along with Montague and Yolanda, play as con artist rats selling hair tonic in the kingdom of Fausalia. After they get arrested, they meet Emperor Fozzie, an eccentric bear whose every whim and action set the fashion for his subjects. Rizzo tells the Emperor that he happens to be the best tailor in all the land and is hired to make the Emperor some new clothes. So, Rizzo and his cohorts decide to make a special material that he says cannot be seen by the dull and uneducated. So, Emperor Fozzie decides to have a celebration to show off his new clothing right away and invites the rats to be his guests of honor. However, when the Emperor shows off his clothing to the townsfolk, a young boy named Robin, who happens to be the brightest person in the kingdom, sees that the Emperor is naked. In the end, the Emperor and his kingdom learn that it's best to think for themselves and follow your own fashion, and the rats are sentenced to 10 years in the dungeon. And finally, we come to our last story, The Elves and the Shoemaker. In this version, Kermit plays a poor shoemaker who makes shoes so ugly that nobody buys them. One sad day, the local banker demands that the shoemaker and his nephew Robin pay half of what they owe him by the next day. Robin wishes for a miracle, and then suddenly, the following evening, 3 elves, who resemble Elvis Presley, come and make beautiful blue suede shoes. Over the following 2 days, business improves and the banker gets paid in full. And after studying the blue suede shoes, the shoemaker soon figures out how to make shoes that are not very ugly. In the end, thanks to a suggestion from Rizzo, the shoemaker and Robin make white sequin jumpsuits to thank the elves for their help. And the elves relocate to Las Vegas and become huge singing stars at the palace. And now for my final words. Overall, Muppet Classic Theater is a fun Muppet movie. Sure, it may have a few issues, like no live-action guest stars, and several other Muppet characters are absent in this. But on the positive side, I think each story is presented very well, and I think it does a decent job introducing children to stories that they love, and to stories that they may not know at the time. Trust me, I didn't know about 2 of them back then. Plus, the songs are catchy, zany, comical, and toe-tappingly fun. Kermit and the gang do great jobs in each story, and Gonzo and Rizzo make hilarious hosts. And the puppeteering is absolutely spot on. So, I guess this is a movie that is considered to be underrated these days. And to me, it's an absolute must-watch for every Muppet fan. While it hasn't gotten a DVD release or an addition to Disney Plus yet, if you want to check this movie out for yourselves, look no further than YouTube. And trust me, you and your children will have a great time. I give this film a 94% out of 100. Well, friends, that's all for now. Be sure to... Uh-oh. Sounds like big trouble out there. Be sure to stay tuned for my next episode. Mustang Power.
Now you got a new prescription, make you boogie all night. Boogie in the basement till the broad daylight. Rockabilly baby gonna shout hooray. You're the one to save me from a bad shoe day.
Special kind of leather and put a little rhythm in the shoes.
So listen to the news. No more bad shoe blues. Any old rhythm you choose, you got your blue suede shoes. Oh yeah, that's right. Let's stitch it up, fellas.
Mercy.
Oh baby, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.
I'd like to thank you.
No, I'd like to thank the both of you.
Well, let's get out of here.